Thanks for your time. I really appreciate it, man. And yeah, like I was saying, I originally just kind of met you through the digital sphere on Instagram and saw you commented on a few different clips. We have mutual friends that came on my podcast, and then um I I would say intuitively I had you on. We're rolling too, just making sure everything's good.
Yeah.
Um yeah, intuitively had you on because you're a man in Austin, just in the world that I aspire to also just to meet, but also because you have these characteristics and qualities that I aspire to also fill within myself.
Hmm.
Um, it looks like through some of the posts that you've put up, it's around holistic health, but you're also focusing more on dating
Mhm.
for men, and um, yeah. So there's a lot of different qualities that you've portrayed through your posts on how to be a healthier, stronger man when it comes to maybe not just dating. I know you're specific, like that's your niche right now, but also just in life in
Mhm.
general. And I think we need more. Uh, we need more of that. And for me, I'm 31 years old. I've never been married, but I've been in really it's one long-term relationship. It was like 3 years, and I'm trying to get back into the dating scene. And
Nice.
I actually have a date tomorrow.
Do you
And
really?
yeah,
Nice.
and it's like the first one that the first one-on-one that I've had or that I will be immersing into for a long time. And I mean, the last couple that I went to a personality playbook. There's
Oh, cool, yeah.
Yeah, that's more of like a group. There's a lot of different people,
Mhm.
and so I did two of those, and then I did another one, but it was at Third Eye, and so I've done three
Like
like
dating
big
events.
dating events
Yeah.
and meeting like 15 different people, and I was pretty happy with myself, like how I showed up, and
Mhm.
but still, I wanna continue to well, I wanna hear different points of feedback from you, like how your interest in becoming a dating coach just became into fruition, but also um, maybe you've been very transparent and vulnerable, and I think if you don't want to talk about that, you don't have to. But
Yeah.
it's something that I think a lot of people they gravitate towards because they're like, no one usually opens up about this,
Yeah.
and this is what I'm going through, and
Mm.
to hear how he went through this kind of lights a fire within me, and it invigorates me to be able to move forward and then progress and improve my life. Um, so anyways, man, I'll turn it to you just to introduce like what you're currently the dating coach entrepreneurial path that you're focused on, and like how did you what motivated you to ignite this into your life?
Yeah, it's a long story, and there's so many funny nooks and crannies to it, but the
Sure.
gist of it is, we go through these evolutions,
Mhm.
and sometimes when you make a change, you think, "How in the world is this related?" You think, like, you're really just going to the like, a total different world, but as I look back and reflect, a lot of this is more succinct than I thought, and so like leaving Heart and Soil and starting my own coaching business where it was kind of holistic health
Mhm.
made sense. But then as I was like really drawn to helping men in the dating world, I actually, there was a lot of fear, but I don't know that I labeled it as fear. I thought it was rationalizing the logistics
Mhm.
behind making a change. But now that I look back, it's like, oh, I was afraid to follow my passion, and I'd done that before in life and not been afraid of it and just made the leap and kind of been almost too precarious in making that leap. So it was
Sure.
interesting that this time it took me like a year to actually be like, I don't care what people know me as, what they affiliate me with, what I
Sure.
might be an expert in. I feel very passionate about this. I want to share this. And like you said, a lot of it stems from things that are very vulnerable
Yeah.
to share and that
Yeah.
were very painful. And then, like you also so keenly mentioned, it's not unique to me. And so
No,
that's what
no,
gets me amped
no.
up.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, you know what? I can turn my pain into purpose. And also, sometimes hitting rock bottom is the only way to know which way is up. And it makes you 10 times the man you were prior if you
Yeah.
choose to use it versus be a victim to it.
Yeah.
And so I guess that's the short version of how I got to what I'm doing is as a series of following my passion, coaching, working for someone else, but
Sure.
then being disenchanted with that, and then trying to basically do what I was doing for someone else, but on my own with my own spin, but realizing there was something more.
Yeah.
And I love health. I think health is super important for men and women, for everyone. But sometimes there's a destination that men really want. And sometimes it's not just, oh, I want to be healthy. Sometimes like I want to acquire the woman of my dreams. I want to have this amazing partnership. And that's more motivation for them to put their lives together
Yeah.
than just being healthy.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that's what I kind of realized is like, well, let's use that motivation. Let's attain that. But then let's also reap all the benefits along the way of the things that guys don't even realize that they want until they start to live that way and they get to see that, whoa, there is so much value. There's so much silver lining. There's so many byproducts in this. And so that's how I've kind of evolved into the niche. And it did stem from a lot of personal experience, like 5, 6, 7 years ago. Would have never thought that this is what I would be doing, but I'm happy that I'm here and I'm hell bent on doing something with it.
Well, good for you, man. Because it can be scary going down a path of one, just entrepreneurial, because I work for a 9 to 5 and they kind of give you these guardrails for you to get your steady paycheck, and here are your goals and here are your responsibilities. But as an entrepreneur, you're just kind of, it's a free world and you have all these different options and like this infinite amount of things that you can kind of incorporate into your, your whole, like just the logistics side, but also how you incorporate your foundations, like philosophical stuff. So it's like an open world. And yeah, you mentioned how some men, they want to improve their health, but there's like one potentially thing they want to acquire, and that may be finding their life partner. And it is interesting to see some men, like maybe they don't have their nutrition or their exercise figured out, but as soon as they find someone that they love and they have like a kid, it's like everything starts to kind of coalesce into order.
Yeah.
It's like, I have to now.
Yeah.
It's not just me anymore. And I've kind of done, there's here at Squatch, there's a lot of different men, I think, and women too, that are like, hey, something feels maybe a little off in my life, and coming to the gym, focusing on nutrition may make me more of an attractive partner. So then I can be with someone that I can settle with that really is like my soul partner for the long term.
Yeah.
And that's a big decision, man. This is something that, I know I want to be a father. I want to build a family and be a leader in the family. And then, I also aspire to have a greater purpose for myself as well. Cause I think as a man, I read this,
The Way of a Superior Man.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes.
It's a great book.
Thank you. Yeah. He talks about how you need to have a higher, almost spiritual purpose, because if your entire life, like the underlying energy that is like your motivation in life is solely like your family, caretaking your family, there's something to how, I don't know, like your presence isn't as maybe strong.
Yeah, it's not as potent. And I think you also have a high risk of building up resentment because you're obligated to serve this family versus having a greater mission. And then the irony is, having a greater mission, you still love to serve your family and provide for them. But there's something greater than that family unit. It's the same thing in relationships. And I think this is what the way of superior man is, or the way of the superior man is
Mhm.
really conveying, is that women are generally more attracted to men who have a mission, not a man whose mission is to acquire them as a
Right,
partner,
right,
right?
right,
Or to, you know, get with women in the dating sense or in any kind of sense. So it's like and that's something, because like when I phrased it before of like, oh, I want to help men acquire the girl of their dreams.
Mhm.
It's funny that during that evolution, they realize that they want so much more than just that,
Right.
but that's the destination.
Yes. Yeah.
But along the way, they start to build out their lives and realize like, oh, personal development is a thing, and there's a lot of value there.
Mhm.
And also, what do I really want? What is my mission? And then that's when they come alive. And I've seen the men that struggle with that. They're the ones who aren't as confident. They're the
Yeah.
ones who struggle with approaching, or they're overly agreeable, like a recovering nice guy, all of these things. But then
Yeah.
the men who have the mission, they're less likely to waste their time, to waste women's time. And they have more courage because they have a greater purpose. So
Right.
getting rejected isn't
Ah,
as big of a deal. And so
that's
there's a
interesting,
lot of
yeah.
spin-offs from that. But having a mission greater than the relationship or greater than themselves or supporting a family is a big deal for a lot of guys in the dating
Yeah.
world. Big deal.
Huh. That's very interesting. So essentially because you have a greater mission, like let's say your mission is to find your life partner, and that's it.
Yeah.
That is the noblest ideal.
Yeah.
Then there might be more fear
Mhm.
around the pressure of bringing that goal, that mission,
Yeah.
as a, making it successful. But it's interesting to like unwind what is actually going on with women potentially resenting men that don't have a bigger mission.
Mm.
And I think you kind of explained it there a little bit. I mean, the men that have a greater mission than their family and themselves, they're more focused on something that, man, that's very interesting.
Yeah, it's almost like if you're a man and you don't have a mission greater than yourself, you get into this relationship and you're super hyped about it for not even just the honeymoon phase, but for a certain period of time. But the longevity of that relationship is at risk,
Yeah.
and the woman's attraction to you is also finite because of that. But then when you have something to continually work towards that's greater than yourself,
Mm,
greater than your relationship, than your family,
yeah.
then it's almost like greater than relationships. We have to have a purpose every day when we wake up. So if you
Yeah.
acquire a relationship, okay, then what? If you get married, okay, then what? If you have 3 kids and that's all you wanted, then what? It's like you kind of lose steam.
Right,
And
right.
you know, you talked about
Right.
spiritually, you don't get there and feel fulfilled. So you have to always be striving for something.
Yeah.
And I don't want to mix that up with people who have this sense of chasing false peaks, and they get there and they're disappointed. They see another false peak and they climb and they get there. But I do think it's healthier than not to have a continuous mission or
Mhm.
something you're always sinking your teeth into. And that might change through different seasons of life. But I think there's a reason why when we see elderly people go into these homes or their care forms,
Yep.
that the minds just shrink literally and metaphorically. It's because they don't have something they're trying to achieve, or they have a purpose every day. So it's not just unique to dating. I think in general,
Just the human nature.
Yeah.
Human.
there's something
Yeah.
attractive about drive and even failing forward, you know?
Mm. Yeah, man. I mean, even for myself, I'm coming off a major injury from so Achilles injury.
Are you saving a few children from a bear in the
Yes,
woods?
yeah. I've been telling people that this bus was like leaning off a cliff, but it just was still kind of teetering,
Yeah.
and I was saving a bunch of children,
Yep.
and I jumped off as the bus was falling, like fully falling down the cliff.
And that's
Made
what
it,
did
but
it.
then I just tore. Yeah,
Mhm.
so
Use that on the date tomorrow.
I will. Yes, I will. And but really, what happened was I was playing basketball here,
Nice.
and so anyways, I tore my Achilles and took a break from the podcast and got surgery, and so I was out of my routine. I was out of my system. And we mentioned bringing up the topic of ayahuasca. Well, I've done 3 sits in the course of the past, it's almost 2 years. And it's been, I mean, it's a like my perspective and understanding of what occurred, like the unfoldings, is also evolving, you
Mm.
know? But I had a um ayahuasca sit planned, and then I tore my Achilles and I ended up still going. Um with my friends, and it was great to like it sounds kind of crazy to be like, all right, I have a fresh injury and you're still gonna go. And I went, and it was a pretty crazy. I talked about it on the podcast, and it's a pretty long story. So I don't want to like get too far into it, but I
Yeah.
can tell you maybe off the mic later. But like what happened like during it was wild. But anyways, a lot of different unfoldings occurred during those sits.
Mm.
And when you sit with ayahuasca, to me it feels like like I'm taking, this is what I believe. I mean, it can be totally different for other people. I do believe there is some connection, like like almost direct connection with the divine, with
Mm.
God, whatever you want to call it. um and it has, without getting into a very deep explanation like Jordan Peterson could get into, through like a more rational explanation. All I can say is the experience is very ineffable. It's hard
Mm.
to put into words, but there is this knowing that there is something greater. So it has enthralled me to like figure out what is happening here, like what is going on. We all have souls, we all have spirits, and it's like I've never really practiced some type of spiritual um daily or maybe weekly commitment and
Mm.
really pondered on it. And but yeah, over the course of the past year and a half, it's been very apparent to me that there is something greater. And that's just what I believe. Other people might disagree.
Yeah.
Materialistic atheists, I respect
Agnos.
their, yeah, I respect their
Yeah.
journey. That's just what I've gone through. And also during these sits, I've had like major emotional releases. What it's felt like decades or years and years of just pent up shit
Mm.
that was released all at once. And it's like the all of a sudden, I mean, it could have been the combination of like tearing an Achilles, being out of my movement routine,
Yeah.
and experiencing a lot of different emotions released, and then like diving into some like kind of like not the best habits, like um but I'm actually very happy with how I've kind of progressed throughout this injury. And
It's a tough one.
yeah.
And when it takes you out of the things that make you who you are, that's extra tough.
Yeah. So, but what I wanted, so I bring all that up to say that on the most recent one, I felt like I've kind of pulled from underneath the underlying motivational force within me. I've like rug pulled it,
Mm.
because I think a lot of what motivated me to do this podcast, to constantly improve myself, was like I'm still unwinding this, but some of it could have been fear of judgment, or
Mm.
like pride, or like just not the noblest or holistic motivation,
Mhm.
and so like you have to reestablish that. And like you also, I don't know about you, but like what maybe helped you survive as a younger person, a young adult, might have been this identity that you were, yeah, a victim. You were wounded
Mm.
at a certain point. It's like, okay, like you can't, that's not attractive, right? Like you
Yeah.
have to eventually grow up and progress and move on from that. And that has been an unfolding for me. I mean, over the course of the past year or so. And
Yeah.
so, um, yeah, so for me, I'm going on this date. It's the first one where I'm like going on a coffee date, right? Like it used to be, let's go out for drinks.
Mhm.
And I saw one of your pinned posts on Instagram was like dating advice. You just like whip this like bottle right behind you, it shatters, and it's like don't drink on the first date,
Yeah.
which I highly agree. I didn't agree with that back in the day, because it was like, let's take the edge off.
Yeah.
Let's just like chill. And it would
Yeah.
really help me just like unwind, just like be loose, and like, and so now it's like I don't drink anymore. And I'm stepping into this and you just want to, still have this open heart and
Mhm.
be, just obviously not tense, but it's I'd like to just hear like why do you recommend for anybody else that wants to listen or
Yeah.
to understand, why do you recommend not drinking on the first date?
It's really serendipitous that you talked about kind of wrestling with yourself through these ayahuasca sits and all these other things,
Mhm.
because I think a lot of people use drinking as a way to avoid wrestling with themselves, right? It's a way to kind of
Yeah.
numb past experiences you may not be fully healed from, or maybe to divert your attention from what your weaknesses are.
Mhm.
And so, one of the best things that I ever did, I've done a lot of experiments, right, with diet, lifestyle, all these
Yeah.
things. That's why I got the job at Heart and Soil. It wasn't because of my credentials, it's because I've been an avid experimenter and I
Nice.
love to learn by doing. I believe everyone should learn firsthand to test the theories that they believe to be true and really question
Mhm.
themselves. And so in 2020 of all years, I ran out of diets that I wanted to try for, because I used to do it for 6 to 12 months,
Yeah.
very, very rigid. I said, you know what, I'm going to go alcohol free. And that year I felt so good. But I was also stripped of a lot of numbing agents,
Yeah.
a lot of mental compartmentalizing that I had done. I kind of stripped that down, and,
Mhm.
and things weren't sequestered anymore. And I had to face myself more than anyone else.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't really about anybody else. And I was married at the time. And then after that, going through, separation, divorce, I was drinking a little more, and I found out, oh, I didn't like those walls coming back up in my mind, and I didn't like who and how I was. So I decided when I moved to Austin to go again without alcohol, but with a little twist to it. I would go out by myself. I love dancing. I love music. I don't like being out super late, but in a new city, it kind of gives you this new city
Mhm.
energy. And I said, all right, I'm going to go out, but I'm not going to drink. And I'm going to go out by myself. I don't know anybody. I've never been here
Wow.
before. And the first 3 weeks that I did that, did it maybe twice a week. I was so nervous. I assumed everyone could tell I wasn't drinking. Everyone was like, why isn't this guy with anyone? He must be a creeper.
Yeah.
And so I'm not an anxious person, but I was so on edge.
Yeah.
And then after 3 weeks, I realized, oh, no one cares. And I can have the most fun by being almost unafflicted by this substance. And so I would get, club soda and lime, or maybe like I would have the bartender get
Mocktail.
get a fancy with a
Yeah,
mocktail,
yeah.
and I would just dance by myself. And then invariably, as I became more comfortable, I became more magnetic.
Mm.
So women, groups of people would kind of amoeba me into their friend group,
Mhm.
and I would just make friends and have a great time. So I like really enjoyed going out by myself, which sounds kind of odd, but then there's just, my life is so structured. It was
Yeah.
wonderful to be confident again, especially because I believed I was damaged goods after the divorce. So to restore a little confidence, but also just have the unknown
Mm.
versus all this structure. So it really helped
Yeah.
me balance my life. And then that brings me to answering your question is what I realized when I was going out on dates. At first, I went on 54 first dates in a year when I decided I was ready to
Wow.
find a relationship
Yeah.
again. And the first few, I was like, I don't really want to drink, but if she's gonna have one, I'll have one. So I don't make her feel bad. But I realized I don't really like this. I don't like this feeling. Why do I feel like I need to do that to accommodate? I was like, oh, this is the overly agreeable side of myself than the
Mm.
side that I was trying to kill off. Obviously, I don't want to be an asshole, but I believe in being reasonably disagreeable, especially if you are doing something that you don't want to do.
Yeah, yeah.
So after a few dates of like, the girl wanted to have a drink because she was nervous. I was like, oh, that's a nice thing for me to do. I was like, you know what? Yeah, feel free to drink, but I'm not going to. I'll get a mocktail so that way we can, clink glasses or whatever.
Yeah.
And what started to happen is women would change their order. And instead of kind of having this anxiousness because I was leading the way, they would
Mhm.
get a mocktail with me and like, oh, that was really nice. And then they kind of settled in. And so it's interesting because it's not
Mm.
even about the alcohol so much. Although I do believe it is used as a crutch. And I think someone who doesn't need alcohol on a first meeting, that says a lot about their state of anxiousness or the lack thereof,
Yeah.
about their confidence, about them knowing what they want. And I think that's a good sign on
Yeah,
a
yeah.
first date. But then the other thing is too, it's an example of leading, you know?
Mhm.
And I think in the first date, even if you're not sure if there's a future with this girl, it's our responsibility to lead by setting the tone for the
Sure.
evening, the
Sure.
environment, right? The ambient energy.
Yeah.
And that's really important.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, so I was dating some girl years and years ago in Boston, and I mean, it was a fun relationship, and drinks were involved on the first date and on most of the dates, but my instinctual behavior was to take care of her, was
Mm,
or to like lead. Like, we're going here, or after this we'll go here. I'll pay for these drinks, and like, and I no one told me to do that. It
mm.
was just like that is what I did. And I mean, maybe you get that from movies or whatever, and like
Yeah.
you do, maybe, yeah, I do, like
Like
you
cultural
yeah, you
implications. Yeah.
imitate, yeah. So, but it just feels right to do it, to lead, and to behave in a manner where you're taking care of them. And like, maybe some feminists will be like, this is the patriarchy
Mhm.
speaking, but uh
Well, ask women what they want. You know, I love doing that because I like to test all my theories. I would love to be proved wrong, and in the end, they're all theories, and all you can do is experiment. I don't
mhm,
believe in absolute truths, but I do believe in anecdotes. And after getting anecdotes from tons of women in varying walks of life, most of the time they're like, "Yeah, I like it when the guy sets the tone for the date."
mhm,
So it's like that's all I need to know.
cool,
You know, I don't
yeah,
really care what certain parties or groups of people think, because even a lot of the people that would identify themselves as under that umbrella have been the people that have told me like, "Oh, I like it when the man like leads in the first date
yeah,
or takes initiative to make me feel safe," or all these other things. So it's like
yeah,
there's got to be something to it.
yeah. That's very courageous to go out a lot. Go out for, I don't know how long you said it was, like multiple weeks,
Yeah, I was
months.
like I did it for a while, but it was 3 weeks until I started to not feel terrible. Like
Yeah,
I had when I first went out, I was probably shaking, honestly.
really.
Like the nervous sweats, which smell
Wow.
different than the normal sweats.
Do
If
they
the
really?
people out, oh dude, it's like I felt like I was a combination of like someone who was over caffeinated and also the crypt keeper. Like
Yeah.
it's just a smell of death and fatigue, and like it was not good.
Death and
Uh,
fatigue.
yeah.
Ew.
I'm not even joking.
Oh,
Like you can
shit.
ask my girlfriend. For some reason, I'm not like super nervous flying, but I until I like get on the plane and know we're on time, it's like
Sure.
again, now that I'm saying it's like how many times does someone have to say they're not an anxious person before they realize they are? Generally, I'm not. But for some reason, before I was used to flying a lot, I would like drink coffee, not eat, and then I'd be really jittery, and I
Mhm.
got what I call like
Yeah.
the coffee sweats. Uh, and it was like that. It's like, you're kind of nervous and you're waiting, and then I think it's like from having high adrenaline, honestly. Not Don't quote me on that.
Okay.
But it smells you're like detoxing like a motherfucker. It's crazy.
uh yeah, I haven't I haven't, yeah, tried to test
The nervous sweats.
the nervous
Yeah,
sweats,
yeah.
if they smell worse, but
Everyone's gonna be like, I'm not gonna take advice from this guy. He's the least sexiest person who's
yeah,
talking
why?
about these death
This guy's smelling
sweats.
his own fucking.
Hey, but I went on 54 first dates,
Yeah.
and I would say that was successful. And
Yeah, man.
I have a woman that I'm very proud to call my woman, and despite the nervous sweats, but it's something you work through, right? Just like
Yeah.
anything else.
Yeah, man. Um, so you've got, well, let me just keep unraveling that.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's very interesting. So a lot of men have structure. They
Mhm.
use their minds to bring order to the chaos of life, and that is a very great skill to have. Sometimes we forget to open our hearts.
Mm.
And what you said was, I went on all of these dates. I went out, did not drink, and I went from a structured life to an unstructured one, like going out into the nightlife, not drinking. Usually, I mean, if you're going out into nightlife and bars, like, that's unstructured. You don't know what's
Mhm.
gonna happen. I mean, it's just like that's the fun of it. Is
Yeah.
just you go out and you just have a good time, but you don't know what the fuck's gonna happen. Versus like structured, orderly ways of living your daily life. Um, and you stated it took multiple reps to get to
Mhm.
the point where you were attracting people into you know, into your life. Um, I find a lot of men might have trouble doing that.
Yeah.
I through different modalities have been able to experience how to open my heart
Mm.
in certain ways, but I find myself coming back to being very cerebral, you
Mhm.
know? Um, how I mean, so it sounds like you said it took a lot of reps.
Mhm.
Eventually you got used to it. And like all things in life, I mean, that's usually the case. Like you find something to be very nerve-wracking, but eventually once you do it all the time, it's like, this is nothing. It's just
Yeah.
a part of the routine. So, um, yeah, like what happened to like flip a switch of where you were just like okay with not drinking, going out, and it's not like to attract people into your life. I mean, I've had phases in my life where that would happen all the time. And there's been phases where, yeah, maybe I am too structured and I'm kind of standoffish.
Yeah.
And there might be some men listening that are like, how do I attract people like that, especially not drinking and establishing that confidence?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if you can tell, like, getting a little misty eyed because it's honestly, I think you have to experience a certain amount of pain,
Mm.
um, to be motivated to be that stubborn, and
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
very
yeah,
stubborn.
yeah.
But you have to experience what it's like to not be the man that you desire to be, and then to be afflicted by that in a relationship you care about.
Mm.
And then realize like there's only one alternative, and that's to go for it, right? Like, not to be cliche, but there's a reason that we are the doers. That's the reason we're the hunters. It's
Right.
because you have to be motivated to go out and get. And it's not to force things, right? It's not
No,
to
yeah, no, no.
impose your will on the world, but it's to have kind of what we were talking about before. This almost borderline overzealous, but tenacious momentum to acquire something, to be better, to fail forward,
Yeah.
you know? And so for me, I just like I hit that rock bottom. You know, I've been a relationship guy for a long time. Like since I was 16,
Mhm.
I've probably been in 6 or 7 relationships from spanning from like 1 to 6 or 7 years.
Okay.
And few breaks in between of a few months or 6 months or something like that. And so I've always really liked the idea of a relationship. And so when I finally got married, you know, I thought, "Oh, this is it." But then, you know, kind of like before, I didn't have a mission greater than myself. And so she failed me in some ways, but I failed her in some ways too. It always
Mhm.
takes 2 to tango.
Yeah.
And then after realizing that, "Oh, I'm partially responsible. I need to fix this for next time." I wasn't disenchanted with marriage, but it was amazing because I had finally the clarity of what I needed to work on. And I don't think I had wrestled with myself enough before then to know that. And so
Yeah.
identifying that and then having a certain pain that you don't want to repeat on yourself or anyone else, that's the motivation that gets you to be like, you know what? Even if I have to beat my head against the wall, I'm gonna make a hole and I'm gonna pass through.
Yeah.
And it might be painful, but it's better than the other kind of pain. And it's interesting because you're almost running to something as much as you're running away from something. But I never thought about it as fear based, right? I never thought, oh, I don't want to go back there. I was like, that's not who or how I want to be. And I know that there's something else, and I want to find that something
Yeah.
else. And so I think there's a lot of intricacies in that. But the main thing I would suggest for guys is like, think about how things have been. Do you want to repeat that for yourself and the person that was in that relationship? And the
Mm.
odds are, if you're honest with yourself, probably not. And that's enough to again, just get the reps. And I love the reps in terms of a metaphor
Yeah.
because, you know, as a gym goer and believing in health, it's such a clear correlation. You don't walk in there trying to, you know, be a high rocks champion or bench 225 or whatever, pick your sport, right? Like run a marathon and get this amazing time if you haven't put the repetitions
Right.
in. Likewise, you're not going to be a high caliber man and you're not going to be with a high caliber woman unless you get the repetitions in.
Mhm.
And repetitions aren't just dates. It's also the repetitions of wrestling with yourself and building the life that you want to have for yourself before you even invite a woman into it.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I know I'm going on a long spiel,
No.
but a lot of things that we're hitting on are all things that I've covered in my book, which is not released yet. I've been working on it for just shy of a year, and I think it'll be one more year until it's out, and I'm so pumped about it.
Nice.
But it's like principles that are loose guidelines for men to become the man that they should be, which is also the man that the woman of their dreams would be attracted to. And one of those things is repetitions in all things.
Yeah.
Another is what I like to call setting the foundation. And that's what I'm really talking about here is building the kind of life and routine that makes you so happy, that connects you with your mission,
Yeah.
that the confidence is there and the tenacity I was just talking about to get the repetitions is there. That's a precursor. It's like if we're looking at a pyramid of success, that's the bottom layer. You have to set the frame. And it's what that means is like when you're building a structure, before you put the insulation in and everything else, you have got to have a sturdy frame. And then you can worry about the accoutrement. And in fact, a woman makes a house a home, but she has got to have a sturdy frame or else you're not going to have plants. You're not going to have like a decent kitchen or anything like that, right? Like it's like as a man, you have to set the frame.
Yeah. I'm thinking of the meme of like, women get so appalled by what makes a man happy. And like, it's a blank room with literally no decorations. It's just like a mattress on the ground. And like Xbox 360 is like, there's nothing in there.
But it's nice to have a woman's touch.
Right.
You know,
of course. Absolutely.
Right? But it's not what we excel at. Like, I'm not a good aesthetic.
I'm not either.
I'm not good with pillows and plants.
Yeah, I'm not either. Like I've made my apartment somewhat homey, but like it could do some work.
Yeah.
You know, there could be some little tweaks.
Reps and the setting the frame, man. I love metaphors and those are really good ones in terms of like thinking about requirements to become that man that would attract the woman that you desire.
Yeah, man. And you know, I mentioned the reps, but you added the framework, and I really like the framework because I think so. I'm a little different than you. I had a lot of dates, you know, girlfriends growing up, but it was very short lasting. And I had one that was like 3 years, and it ended. So it started when I was like 22, ended when I was like 25, and I left because I knew within me that I had to change something. Not just something, it was like my lifestyle, so many aspects of myself I had to work on. And I just felt that being in the relationship would not, I mean, who knows? Maybe I could have made it work with her there, but I wasn't sure if I was even in love with her. And I felt like I don't know, like I kind of entered into the relationship as a lower sense of myself, and I like loved her for the wrong reasons, and it's a lot more complex than that. But I just felt and I'm very happy that it was a very difficult decision, and I mean, but I left the relationship and I left my job, and I just kind of progressed forward with starting to exercise, eat right, read, up level my mind, and all these different things, and like so my framework, my foundation was really not sturdy at all. I was having like, I was anxious all the time. My work schedule was always sporadic and different. I worked in hospitality. I was all over the place with that. And then I would go out and drink all the time, eat like shit.
Sounds like you were living the average American's life.
Yeah, the average man's life. Yeah. But I could feel, man, like, I mean, some people are able to just keep that going.
Yeah.
But for me, I was like, I'm breaking down.
Right.
Like something needs to fucking change here. Or I feel like I'm going to have panic attacks every fucking day or something, like I just, this doesn't feel right. There was some moving force within me. And like going back to like ayahuasca and God, like I almost feel like there was something that was like, you can't keep doing this. You're not meant to do this. And I mean, I think to a degree, like everybody's got that, but some people just keep kind of shoving or whatever. And so, I mean, the past 5-6 years, man, I've been going and reshaping my life, restructuring and building a stronger foundation, whether, that's at the gym, I just did a 3-minute ice bath, and that was the longest one I've done in like 6, 7 months. And just by doing that, I've had more confidence speaking with you right now,
Mm.
because it's like the ice bath for me is very interesting. It's like you go in there, it's so fucking cold. And no matter how cold it is, you can get your mind back and just keep your mind focused and still.
Yeah.
I find when I have anxiety in this chair, speaking with people, it's because my mind is all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you do these hard things, you sharpen your mind, but also still your mind, and daily practice to build those muscles, and then the actual physical muscles, like your physiological strength, and then spiritual, and then finding a mission that's greater. Like this for me is like ideally, like, even though I've been kind of questioning it, and it's been a little unsturdy with this injury and some changes are happening, I'm like,
Yeah.
this still feels right. Like I have a natural skill with this, I believe, and I'm having a lot of fun. I'm creating content and help, people have reached out saying like, this is awesome. Just like you, I'm sure you've experienced people reach out on, because like creating it behind the scenes isn't always fun,
No.
like all the clips and stuff, but
Yeah.
then people reach out and you're like, this is what, like, this is
Yeah.
okay. This is great. Some people, I actually released a clip that went viral with Corey Hibben.
Did you
in
really?
the studio.
I love that guy.
And he's great, man. And I asked him one simple question. I was like, how'd you learn to let go? And he just immediately gets super transparent. He's like, probably my divorce. And then just goes off on that. And I had a few people reach out. I was like, dude, thank you for posting this. Like, this really kind of vibrated the heartstrings a little bit.
Yeah.
And I mean, America is definitely, we have a much higher divorce rate, I think. So, it's nice to do this greater mission and to help other people. And then also, like, I'm challenging myself greatly through this,
Yeah.
So yeah.
If I may, there's a few things that came up that I really want to touch on. First of all, Corey is one of the best dudes I know in Austin. He's one of my best friends here. And the first podcast I ever went on was his for his 100th episode. We had a blast. But we actually bonded over divorce. We met, didn't really know him. I honestly wasn't sure if he liked me because it's just like he has this very inquisitive face, but you can't tell if he's pissed at you. Or if he's like, but he's just like he's just very curious. And he knows it.
He knows he's an introvert.
But I pick on him about it all the time. But we went to Cosmic Coffee. It's just beautiful outdoor coffee spot here in Austin. And we just circumvented the small talk, the bullshit, and went straight for like the emotional jugular. And so we talked about like, both of our divorces and stuff like that. And it was like, we just clicked. So he and I have both grown a lot because of our divorces. And I think a lot of guys do. Again, you can choose to use it or you can choose to be a victim to it. And we both chose to use it, even though it was very painful.
Yeah.
But then the thing that was really coming to mind as you were saying all of this is it sounds like you're setting your foundation.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. So this is more for like maybe a word of caution to the audience. I see a lot of guys who feel like, oh, my foundation is not set, so I'm not going to date. And I would actually advise against that. Like if you are on the road to setting your foundation, that's enough of a foundation to be dating.
Yeah.
Because if you go back to the repetitions piece, if you say, oh, I have to get to this point, then I'll start dating, it never happens. And let's say it does. Well, then you're less proficient than you should be in proportion to the foundation that you set in the dating world. So even if you have a great foundation, you don't know what it's like to date. You don't know how to understand women. You don't know how to lead. Yeah. And so then you're imbalanced.
You have to learn by the experience.
You just got to learn by doing. Yeah. So it's like, okay, is it ever too early to date? I don't know the answer to that. Only everyone needs to ask themselves that, because and there's different seasons too. So that's a question everyone should always ask.
It's very subjective.
Exactly. But I see a lot of, especially younger guys, to think they need to build the castle. They need to accumulate all this wealth,
right.
And then they'll find the right woman.
That's
I think it's not an order of operations. I think it's more nuanced than that. So there might be reasons. Maybe you're fresh out of a divorce. Maybe you're just starting your business and you don't have time to date. That's all fine.
Yep.
But just never think that if you're doing the work and you want to date, that it's too early, because those repetitions are so valuable.
Mm-hmm.
And so is time. And you can do both, right? It's your side quest. Going back to toggling too. Structure's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really love chaos, but I do love the unknown, and I like winging it. I like improv. Maybe that's a good way to say it. And so I find if you are so deep into personal development and building structure, you're not fun to be around. And women don't want to be around you, even if it is impressive.
Yeah.
But if you can toggle and you say, all right, you know, this is my mission. This is what I'm building. This is how I'm working on myself. And I've done all those things today, and I have a date tonight. I'm going to, you know, have fun tonight. I'm going to be playful. I'm going to be silly. I'm not going to have any kind of filter. And so if she doesn't like, you know, the goofy side of me, then like, at least I know I have clarity that this isn't a girl I should continue to get to know. But it's kind of nice to toggle off of all of those things. Because if you treat it like an interrogation, or you're only saying this is what I want, it's like, that doesn't really show somebody both sides. And it's like, I'm not saying make it super goofy and like a comedy sketch,
Right.
but you should be able to do both on the first date in terms of talking about things that matter to you with transparency and vulnerability, because there is a distinction there. But also, don't be afraid to like, if like a risky joke comes to mind, like maybe it's slightly dark humor, just throw it out there and see how she handles it. Have fun with it, right? Or if something makes you laugh, you don't have to hold in your genuine laugh, or you don't have to laugh if you don't find something that's funny, right? Just kind of like have fun with it, you know, experiment with it. And I found that most of the time women love that, because it almost invites them to drop their guard.
Yeah.
And this goes back to the leadership thing. And I know that was a lot of different points, but there's just things I really wanted to throw out there for clarity, because you can pendulum swing, right? You can go so far to the sincere self-development, frame building side of yourself that you lose what makes you unique and what makes you come alive, and what's like having a silly damn goose time is about. And I think that's unfortunate that we pendulum swing that far sometimes.
Yeah. You got to have some self-awareness to recognize when you're going that far.
Yeah.
I think I've found myself a little bit in that same situation where I'm like, okay, I got to like, you know, have this amount of investments and, you know, have this physique and this mentality and this and that. And it's like, no, I mean, like, so listen, I mean, there was a certain point where I was dating someone and I knew, I was just like, this is not working.
Yep.
Like, this is just not it. And then, when you get out of it, it's like, okay, give me some time and some space to like recalibrate a little bit. And you kind of just know, it's not like this, like, you know,
like a checklist or
it's just like, okay, you know, and right now, like, nothing is perfect, and I'm still gonna go on this date. And if if it goes really well, awesome. If it collapses, awesome. You know, like, you could just let it. You need failure. Like,
that's the sweet spot.
You gotta I've said to myself, it's gonna probably be painful to fail and be denied or like rejected, and we need that, because I mean, like, you don't want to be rejected all the time, right? Like, you don't want to be, you know, because it is painful. But
but winning everything and having no challenge is also valueless. There's no gratification and no progression in that either.
Yeah. So you don't want it to be a form of escapism, and I think you have to have discernment and self-awareness to recognize when you're doing that. And I think that you have to actually to know when you're going through, like, if you're escaping, like, you know, you have to go through it, and then eventually, I mean, I'm speaking for myself, but like, you know, like, you just know that when you're avoiding something, at least I do, and maybe that's been through the dedication and practice of like self-awareness through different techniques like meditation, whatever.
Yeah.
But like, after a while, you realize, like, okay, I'm reading so many fucking books. Now I just need to like stop reading so many books, go out and apply a thing, like go out into the world and apply the knowledge that you have. And so, yeah. And like, I saw a quote in a book that I'm reading right now by C.S. Lewis, and he was saying, like, I forgot what the chapter and topic was about, but it was essentially like how we can avoid, like, we can be avoidant, ignore certain things, and escape through anything. Like, even if it's like a exercise.
Oh yeah.
Going to the gym, playing tennis, something that you've always looked at as a healthy thing.
Yeah.
It can still, like, you can excessively get into that and avoid yeah, maybe going out on dates or having the difficult conversation with the person that you're with. And um, yeah, I mean, it's a dance, you know?
It is. It truly is a dance. And like I said, an improv dance, not one where you know all the steps. Um, one of the most interesting things about dating is how much you become skilled in areas outside of dating. Again, 54 first dates. There's a few second dates, not a lot, because I really knew what I wanted and I didn't like wasting people's time. It made it really.
How did sorry.
Yeah, go
How
ahead.
did you establish what you really wanted?
Honestly, I think it was related to previous relationships, divorce, being overly agreeable. I had seen the opposite of not necessarily the opposite. I've experienced enough things that I didn't want to know what I did want. There's a process of elimination. Same
Yeah.
thing with all the diets I tried, right? Like there's all these different diets I wanted to see which one made me feel the best. You have to try a little bit of
Yeah.
everything to
Yeah.
really have clarity. Or at least I do. Maybe people work differently, but no, I love theories, but I don't like following them blindly. I like to test them.
Sure.
And I like to question mine if I've been
You have
practicing something for a certain amount of time. I like to
Yeah.
revisit it. I've done like raw milk experiments or, cutting out eggs or all kinds of different things. And so I think it's the same way in the dating and relationships. You're like, oh, like this girl's really into this. I don't really know what this is about. Let me kind of see what it's about. Oh,
Yeah.
I really like this. I like these attributes about her, or not really. Like she's great, but not really so much for me. Or like, how was I in my role in this relationship?
Sure.
I was a little more passive. I don't know if I liked that or not. I'm leading a little more, and they appreciate that. I actually feel better with that. So maybe I'll do that a little more. Those just little things like that.
Cool. Okay, I interrupted you. I don't know
No,
where
no,
you
you're
were
good.
going. I'm not sure where you were going before.
Oh, I think it was with developing skills that you wouldn't necessarily think are related to dating. And I think there's wild parallels between personal development, health, business, and dating. And one of those is having hard conversations. And I used to be overly agreeable, and that you really build up a lot of resentment. And you think that you're doing it to accommodate people around you. You think that you are actually being considerate of your loved ones, but
Yeah.
it seems that way in the short run, but in the long run, you cause so much more pain and it's so ineffective. But then when you are reasonably disagreeable and you can cut to the chase in the most kind but direct way, it's actually the most loving thing you can do for
Yeah.
people. You respect
Yeah.
their time, the quality of their presence, their attention. And I think for women especially, our job as men is to not waste their time and to not play games.
Yeah.
And we see that a lot, or I hear about it a lot in the dating world. And so one of the feedbacks that I got most frequently from the women that I would go on dates with was, even if like we had a conversation that we didn't really see eye to eye or wasn't the outcome that they wanted, is that while like I appreciate you being, forthright about this and
Sure.
forthcoming about it, because I don't get this a lot. And that's what made me realize, well, the bar is really low. So like if you're a guy who doesn't feel confident, or you're not sure, what you have to offer, if you're unabashedly yourself, if you're transparent, if you're honest, if you don't waste her time, if you tell her what you want,
Mm-hmm.
it already puts you in the top 10% before doing anything else.
Sure.
That's how bar the low is in metropolitan areas, especially.
Mm.
Because there's a lot of guys who hide behind this guise of, or this veil of ambiguity, right? They don't want to, or maybe anonymity is a better word, that they don't necessarily have the connection, so they can go on a date and the girl doesn't know any of his friends, he doesn't know any of her friends, so they can kind of operate in this incognito mode and say what they want to say and be how they are. And so there's some guys that take advantage of that. But I would encourage guys to go on first dates as if everyone they know is in the room, and their exes, because it holds you accountable to saying things that are truthful.
Mm-hmm.
And to treating somebody in a way that they deserve to be treated.
Yeah.
And the irony is, again, not only the most kind and loving thing you can do, but then, whoa, will you be set apart from the competition?
Mm-hmm.
And you'll also be set apart from the worst way
Yeah.
that you could present yourself as.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I'm pretty sure I'm usually pretty transparent and honest when it comes to, because I can be agreeable as well. And being agreeable in a way can almost be like, you can almost lie to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So you're trying to be honest, you're trying to be transparent, you want to be just yourself, right? But if you're agreeable, like you were saying, you're trying to accommodate everybody else, but it's also like a form of lying to yourself.
Yeah.
And yeah, for me, like I don't know about you, but I mean, I tend to be a little bit more agreeable. I think over the course of the past few years, like I'll state my mind and I try to be, I feel like I'm kind of in my own bubble too, but I
Mm.
have conversations with friends where we're like, yeah, I don't know if I totally agree with that, but like you can still like kindly, yeah, directly
Yeah.
speak to certain things that you might not totally agree with. But
It's just like everything else, right? I've seen people overcorrect from
yeah,
simpering nice guy to belligerent asshole. And
yeah, that's
there is
not
a
gonna
happy
work
medium.
either.
Like I'm
Yeah,
not telling people that like to not be kind and not to be considerate, but there is a happy ground where where you still compromise. There's Compromise is a crucial part to being mature, not only with yourself but with other people.
sure,
But the happy medium is about always stating what you believe and how you feel and what you desire, but maybe on terms of the output or the actionable items, then you compromise to meet the other person, right?
sure,
So it's if let's say like first date and maybe you disagree on health. Maybe she's vegan and you're carnivore. It's right. So you can say why you believe what you believe, but you don't need to force her to change.
yeah,
And you can ask her questions about why she does it without trying to poke holes in her
yeah,
theory. And that's something I've noticed too is that when you have an open mind and you're genuinely curious, even like I tried raw vegan for 12 months. I felt miserable. But I tried it because I wanted to
for
know
12 months.
12 months.
Whoa,
And then I went on a date with one vegan girl on this entire 54 first dates. And she was vehemently against, uh, carnivore, animal based, those kinds of things. But we
sure,
actually had a really positive discussion
yeah, yeah.
because I was like, I asked her, so why do you follow this kind of diet? And she's like, oh, the ethics and,
It's usually the
the
case. Yeah.
sustainability. I'm like, yeah, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. She's like, what do you mean? So then it talked about, like regenerative
Oh, yeah, yeah,
agriculture
yeah.
and supporting the
Such
local
a
farmers more
radically
ethical. And
yeah,
it's like, oh, this Venn diagram, we actually have more overlap than we don't. And so,
yeah,
and that might be an extreme example, but I think most topics can be like that. It's just how you choose to approach it.
mhm,
And so it's really interesting to find the middle ground where you're not dodging your beliefs and you're not pandering to hers, but you're saying the truth with an open mind. And so that's a skill that I did not have before these 54 first
yeah,
dates. And no amount of time in business or talking with friends would have got me there. But when you have 54 first dates and you
yeah,
have to convey what you believe and receive what they believe, the amount of I got so good at that. And I also got really good at having tough conversations, whether I started the conversations or someone else did. It's like that one-on-one ability to say, like, I understand where you're coming from,
mhm,
but I have a different opinion and let me share that with you and let's find a
sure,
compromise. And so guys don't realize every date that doesn't work out or maybe is kind of not great, it's not a waste of money.
no,
It's not a waste of time. There's so many byproducts to personal development in you having hard conversations and interacting with strangers in this way. And again, as you can tell, I could go on and on about
sure,
it,
yeah,
but I think I've seen a lot of guys assume that it's transactional. Like I took a girl on a date, I paid for dinner. What a waste of time and money. I'm like, no, there's so much more to it
no,
than that.
no,
And ideally, both parties going on a first date after that, even if it doesn't go well, it each gets them closer to the kind of person they should be with.
right,
So
right.
I encourage people to reframe it.
No, I totally agree. Yeah,
Each date is an opportunity for you to help this person get closer to who they need to be to,
mhm,
and vice versa. And it's like that makes it more beautiful because then it's almost a side quest. There's no rejection, there's no letdown, there's no waste of money. It's
yeah,
an investment for both of you guys. And that
yeah.
gets me fucking amped.
That's a great like shifting of perspective to have. Um, and I agree. Yeah, as of late, I've shifted that too. I'm like, okay, you just got to go out and
Yeah.
get in the reps, man. Yeah. So the agreeableness, for men that are in the same category of being agreeable, there could be reasons why. I mean, there's
Mhm.
probably maybe early stage in their life where I don't know, could have. I mean, it can be a variety of things. For an example, is like um, female adult when you're a kid is just pretty. It's it's like the devouring mother kind of thing where she's like very authoritarian or like administrative, and like no matter what you do, like she's just gonna like make you miserable if
Yeah.
you just don't agree with her. And that might be something really hard for someone to kind of you know, loosen up and like have some reasonable disagreement with women. So do you have any other comments or advice aside from the reps, and just like noticing when you're becoming agreeable? Is there anything else that men can do to help with that?
It's a really good question. I think the biggest thing, and we talked about it a little bit, but maybe we can say it more concisely, is realize that, because I think a lot of times agreeability, the origin is, I think that I'm being nice to this person. Good intentions do pave a path straight to hell sometimes. So realizing that, the most kind and loving thing that I can do, the nicest thing I could do for this person is to not be overly agreeable.
Well, it's kind of like Jordan Peterson saying you should always tell the truth no matter what. And I mean, some people might say like, well, this lie saved, this family during World War II. It's like, like, what do you think about that? Like, tell the truth.
I like to think agreeability as short-sighted niceties, where transparency and reasonable disagreeability is a long-term investment in the person that's in front of you, because it almost always plays out that way.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, okay, it's nicer in this moment. Well, it comes back to bite you or them in some way. And you don't always get to see the outcome, right? So that makes it tough, because you don't actually get to be like, oh, I said this one little white lie. How did this play out for this person if they're not in your life anymore? But in every time that I have heard and seen this play out, it's the being too nice up front is like the worst thing you can do for the people you care about or the people you're starting to get to know.
Yeah.
And so I just like to think that, because I'm a long-term thinker. Like, I invest in my health for the long term. I have my frame and my structure. I challenge myself for the long term. My relationships would like it to be for the long term. So whether it's friends or romantic interest, like, the more reasonably disagreeable you can be, I think the more that you're having the courage to love them properly.
Well said. You've got something you've said online, 1 + 1 = 4.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means.
Well, I'm just bad at math.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So there's another principle in the book. And honestly, I don't know if this is in someone else's book, because I've heard this expression. I don't know if it's in relation to relationships, but I see the joining of two people, whether that's dating or marriage, or could even be business or friendships too. You don't want your potential to be simple addition. If you and I come together to collaborate on something, it's not like my potential plus your potential and that's it. 1 + 1 = 2.
Sure.
But if we come together to collaborate and we have an exponential result because we're teaming up, it's 4 or more. And it's the same thing in romantic relationships. You shouldn't date a girl, and a girl shouldn't date a man, or a woman shouldn't date a man if it's just like, oh, we come together and 1 + 1 = 2. Things are fine. They're good. This is what we wanted. You want someone who's going to challenge you, who's going to expedite your growth, who's going to have attributes and benefits you didn't even see. And that should be a two-way street between the man and the woman in a relationship. And so it's just realizing that there's an exponential return for your investment on a romantic relationship, not simple addition.
Okay. All right, so you're not just bad at math.
No. I might not be the best at it, but not that bad.
Yeah. So you've got I saw on your website 4 interconnective foundations that you bring into your coaching. Could you get into those a little bit without revealing too much? Wanna...
Well, I don't mind, giving away the keys to the castle, because I think it's all about
integration, practice.
Yeah, exactly.
Practicing.
Exactly.
Sure. Yep.
I'll kind of segment them a little differently than they are on there, But I mean, part of it is what we talked about before, setting your frame. Like, you absolutely have to focus on health. And as you and I know, when you prioritize your health, it spills over into other realms. So when you get in a good routine, you're optimizing your physiological health, you're
Mhm.
also working on your hormones, and that also affects brain function, and that affects your ability to be patient in tough conversations, or to have the drive to meet your, woman's needs, both in terms of emotional but also physical.
Sure.
And so I just think all that's so interconnected, that that's part of setting the foundation. Is I don't think you can be in a healthy relationship and have your physiological health tattered, right?
I agree.
It can't be in ruins to be emotionally and mentally well enough to have the responsibility of a romantic relationship. So that's definitely something that I think is really important to focus
Mhm.
on. And then the other thing is, what I love to do with people is reverse a 3-year vision, and it's for the mission piece of it, right? It's like, if people don't know what's important to them 3 years from now, we probably don't have much semblance of a mission, and that's okay. We all don't know our mission in this
Yeah.
moment,
Yeah.
but maybe we should ponder on what that
Yes.
looks like, and what we
Yeah.
can do to start taking steps towards identifying a mission, and also implementing that in a daily, weekly sense, like taking strides towards it.
Mhm.
Um, but then, there's other things too, as in terms of, iterations on these things, right? Like, you can start somewhere with health, start somewhere with dating, start somewhere with your 3-year vision, your mission, but you have to start doing it. And as soon as you start to fail forward, you realize how you need to edit
Yeah.
this
Yeah, yeah.
progress or this program, as well as iterate on it. And that's the other exciting thing to me, because it's not like a plug and play day after day. It's every week, every month, it's new challenges, it's different.
Mhm.
And so I would say, like, a big piece of any evolution is the conviction to move forward with the flexibility to adapt. And I love that, because it seems mutually exclusive or almost counterproductive to have
Mhm.
these two things being like the dual heads of the Hydra. But it's actually, they have to coexist, because anytime you're doing iteration and you're progressing, if you have such a concrete plan that's not flexible, it's like invariably you will miss out on things like learning points or opportunities.
Sure.
But if you have enough conviction to move forward, and you slightly adjust your direction, then you're always going to move forward, and you're always going to uncover things that otherwise you might be blind to.
Mm. Okay.
That might have been a little more, abstract, but that's what really gets me excited about, personal development in
Yeah.
general.
Yeah, I definitely agree with taking care of your health and how that compounds or reverberates outwards. I think that not taking care of my health in my last relationship was the cause of potentially why it wasn't successful. And yeah, I think that's a great way to start improving. If you're in a relationship already, so and it's a little rocky, trying to um, a buddy of mine, his name's Zach Holmel, he just gave like 3 tips the other day on Twitter of like how to just improve yourself if you're having anxiety or like things are just kind of rocky. It's like, get away from your phone,
Mm.
get off your devices. Um, the second one, he talks about working out, and it could be very simple, like going for walks, push ups, pull ups, whatever. Doesn't have to be crazy. And then third, go on an evening walk with your entire family
Mm.
every day. And you'd be surprised to see like what comes up when you're not using your devices. You're going on walks with your family, and you're moving the body, and you're like your brain's functioning better as you're walking, obviously. Um, and that's I think that's a great way to like start, and then eventually you can continue to, like, I like your concept of failing forward.
Mm.
Doing this, I mean, dude, so many times of failing forward.
Yeah.
But it's like it's gotten to a point where it's like, okay, like you get used to it, right?
Yeah.
So
And I didn't coin that expression, but there's a lot of different people who've said it in a lot of different ways. So whether it's failing forward, learning by doing, or, again, beating your head against the wall, just having that sheer
yeah, yeah,
willpower, stubbornness, it's like, they're all ways that you kind of feel lighter because you have momentum. right?
Yeah.
It's like when you're striving for something and you're not deterred by failure,
Yeah.
it's just everything in life is lighter.
Yeah.
And I think that's really the sweet spot, because when you achieve something, you're like, okay, what's next? But if you're just working towards something and you're not daunted
Yeah.
by tripping or stumbling or what have you, then there's just something that elevates everything in life about that.
Yeah. Yeah, man. So I watched a clip of you speaking to someone on a podcast with your now girlfriend, and you were speaking to, when you were bullied in middle school,
Mm.
and um, some older generations might say like, if you're being bullied, just stop being a pussy and just get after it and like punch him across the face and get over it.
Yeah.
And there is some merit into just like not letting the bullying continue to keep happening every day and like taking action. There's one time I got bullied. I mean, I think a lot of people at least get bullied a couple times when you're in grade school. I was getting bullied by this guy that was my neighbor at my locker, and he just kept bugging me, and like I just kept telling my dad to a point where he was like, you know what? Next time, just shove him against the locker. Tell him to fucking stop. I won't get mad at you if you get in trouble. And so one day I did that.
Did you really?
I did.
Damn, dude.
He just kept pulling my strings. So like, and I wasn't a big kid.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm like I'm naturally a skinny guy. And he was similar stature, but he just did one thing, and I just fucking slammed him against the locker, and I was like, fucking stop. Or I don't know exactly what I said, but I was like, I'm fucking sick of this.
Yeah.
And he toned his shit down.
Nice.
But I mean, I'm not endorsing violence, right?
Yeah.
But like being just a little bit of a little bit of a tap on the ass, yeah. And I didn't punch him across the face or anything like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we all go through some pretty difficult moments growing up. I would say for me, like dating was difficult. I mean, I had friends that were really good at it. It was like their natural environment, and for me, it was like a minefield.
Yeah.
Just the way like certain things unfolded when I was really young, and yeah, it was tough, man. It was tough to navigate those things and then be like made fun of by my own friends. Like you're once again like you're a pussy, or you're a homo, you're a faggot, you're gay for not taking it all the way with this girl, and like what this girl likes you, why aren't you starting to date her?
The classic 90s insults.
Oh, dude, so much. And for me, it was like, okay, I am attracted to this woman, but I've had these, and you're a fucking teenager, so you don't know how to consciously say things like we're talking about right now. So you're just so frustrated because you're like, I know that I want to progress as a man or as a teenager and like take this action with this girl, or it may not even be relationships. It could be something else, but you just have these things that have occurred within you and within your life that you don't know how to just crystallize, and so yeah, I was pretty captivated by your clip. I mean, you talked about bullying and then how one of your friends was a big lesson for you.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you mind sharing
No,
that.
no,
but
not
I
at
mean,
all.
I had I've had friends that I've learned from as well. And
like attempted, or you lost them?
well, I
Or
was pretty
both?
good friends with. I had a couple examples. I had a friend that I grew to be friends with him very quickly in like 8th grade. And then we went to high school, and I think he went to a different high school, but he just did a lot of drugs, and he ended up committing suicide. And, it wasn't as hard hitting because we kind of separated, we distanced from each other. But I mean, I've thought about it so many times since I've grown. And then I had another friend, and I actually met him freshman year. And my high school was 2 towns put together.
Oh, really?
So he was from the other town, and I was from the other town. And he was so nice. He was pretty well known, very, very sociable, very kind, very nice, athletic, just like all around great guy. But he started and I met him at that point, but he started to get into the wrong crowd.
Mm.
And our our high school was known for pills and some different drugs.
Mm.
And he started to get into that, and I could slowly see his character because I just met him, so I had a fresh template of who he was. I mean, other people that knew him for so long had even a more deeper connective understanding of who he was. And then he just gradually changed, man. Like he was doing pills, and you could just see how it affects the brain and affects your mood, and it was scary to watch. And I was smoking a lot of weed and drinking when I was in high school, but I was like, I'm not doing any pills. I can just see something's wrong there. So that's all to say, like, you have these friends that you never wish upon them what they went through, like the really shitty, kind of destructive moments that they go through. And you pray that they get out of it and that they're healthy and that they live a good life. But at the same time, they provide lessons for other people to be like, okay, like.
Yeah, the silver linings for some really, really unfortunate things. Yeah.
Yeah.
I hadn't really thought of what you mentioned about standing up for yourself. I think I was so in my own head because it was middle school.
And I was too, to a degree, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, it's almost how you see yourself because you're bullied. It's almost worse than the bullying itself. It depends on the situation.
Yeah.
But for me, that's what it was. And for some other guys I knew, that's what it was. Dude, I was a band geek. I was not well-spoken. I was looked at as like a introverted nerd in middle school. That kind of changed in high school when I cared less about what people wanted from me and more about what I wanted from myself. But getting bullied at the bus stop, on the bus, in the locker room, and the lockers in the hallways, like, or just wanting to keep your head low perpetually, that kind of adds up as a kid.
Yeah.
Right. It's just this constant fear. And you don't know what you know now, like you were saying. And so looking back, it's like, oh yeah, I could just kind of buck up, be myself. There are teachers around. Probably nothing would have happened. Maybe I could have stood up for myself. But in the moment, I think part of me believed that what these guys were saying about me, and girls a couple times too, was true, right? Like all these terrible things that they say, like, you start to believe them. And that was my choice though, right? To believe that. And so, yeah, I mean, I had a note to my parents, I had a bullet chambered, and my mom comes running down the stairs and, knocks on my bedroom door. So like shuffle, put everything away. And I heard about my friend who, ironically, the same day had tried to OD. So we had different methods. And I saw what that did to his mental health, how long it took him to recover, saw what it did to his family. I'm like, wow, kind of like the agreeable thing. It's like, this is selfish of me because of what it would do to everyone around me. And I'm eternally grateful for that because I don't know how long it would have taken me to wake up. I don't know if I would have woken up before doing something irreversible. And he's, I like him a lot. He's doing really well now, and he's married, and he's got this unique sense of humor. He's a very kind person. And so I'm glad that he made it through okay and came out the other side. But I'm also almost indebted to him because, I was close. And that bullet, though, I keep it. It still sits on my nightstand as a reminder that like it never gets that bad.
Wow.
And also like today you have a purpose because like there's one option, but the other and the alternative is limitless. And so I have a tattoo that says hate stirs up strife and love covers all offenses. And that's more about myself than it is other people. It applies to other people too. But it's just like when you start to believe what people say about you that's not true, you're essentially hating yourself. It's like it's self-loathing. It's a lack of self-love, as cliche as that term is. Sometimes it's true. And so,
sorry to interject, but on the other end of that, when you start to believe what other people say and it's good things, you have to be careful because then you can dive back into what they say that's maybe negative. Because some people like that grandiose comments from people, and it's like, well, thank you, I appreciate that, but
Yeah.
I think that's the reason why remaining humble is a virtue,
Yeah.
because then you can dive into other people's comments saying like, you're just a fucking big talker on the microphone. You're not doing anything to help anybody. I had
Mm,
someone comment on a YouTube thing.
really?
It was like, you're just a big yapper, man. You think you're doing you really think you're like progressing forward as a man? It's like you're just talking on in a mic. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't say anything back, right?
Yeah.
But it was like I like felt it for a bit and I was like, nah.
Yeah. Well,
It's
whoever
just a
that is
comment,
having
right?
a bad day.
Yeah.
And they took it out on you.
If it was like
Yeah.
someone that you care about and they said it like that, yeah, that would hurt a little bit,
Yeah.
right? So it's like you gotta constrain your, the people that you do value their opinion,
Mhm.
and then eventually, you gotta, I wouldn't say put up walls, right? But
Mhm.
like you have to
Take everything with a grain of
just,
salt. You know? Yeah.
yeah.
And so the hate stirs up strife. And I hadn't thought about that though. And like the love covers all offenses. I do believe that because love isn't necessarily a lack of humility. It's just knowing your value and loving you for who you are. And I think that that actually serves both purposes. You don't go too overboard with being self-critical because you find value and you love who you are and how you are and what makes you unique. But then you also you love someone who loves someone else holds them accountable. So you're not going to go off the deep end with other people externally validating you,
Sure,
right?
yeah.
So I think it does kind of cover at least the way that I look at it in both ends of that. But I thought it might end there, like in terms of like, I got the tattoo a few years later. I vowed never to get that bad again. And then by the time junior year in high school rolled around, I was like a whole different person. I was trying sports and doing things and being goofy and acting and music, all these kinds of things in high school. I was scared shitless of doing because I worried about would I get bullied for it or would other people judge me for it. I just stopped caring.
Yeah.
I obviously still cared what people thought. Like it wasn't completely
Right.
like over my, recovering
But
nice
it's not
guy
overbearing.
phase.
Like it's
But
not.
yeah, but I felt free, man. I felt liberated to try things. And that's where the experimenting really started.
Yeah.
I just started trying everything and it gave me life. And but then it's like I didn't really revisit that period myself. But even just 3 years ago, I lost another buddy. So I've been fortunate that there's been a few attempts out of people that I'm very close to, but only two successful attempts. And I hate even using the word success because it's so bass backwards.
Yeah.
But and he was older than me, and I looked up to him a lot.
Yeah.
But it's irony coming full circle. One of the things that I believe led him down this road was a lot of intimate relations with women that were shallow, and he knew it. He told me about it. A lot of relations with a lot of different girls over time, and maybe that was his way of escaping something. We talked about it, and he was aware of it. One of the most physically and mentally capable guys I've ever met. He's like a Captain America motherfucker. He's like and always lifting people up. And every time you talk to him, it was like you were the only person in the universe. And he was, and so it's like you wouldn't think someone like that would go that far, but it's like we all have our struggles, and I could see his soul almost fracturing as the years went by. And I really do believe that like this idea that men who get with women on a very intimate level frequently somehow are unscathed by that. I don't believe that that's true.
I don't think that's true
at all.
No.
Is it easier maybe for guys to get what they want in that way than women because of physiological and emotional kind of variables? Possibly for a lot of men. But the problem is that you're just more in denial about how you're fracturing your soul off to these people. And so I know that wasn't really where we were going with this, but it's just funny how it ties in together because just 3 years ago, kind of, that's that. I was talking to him on the phone. He was going to come out to Austin. I had only been here for like 6 to 9 months. And then a few weeks later, I got a call. I was like, shit. And, my buddy had moved on. And so I really was wondering, well, what can I learn from this? Like my other friend situation, luckily he's still around, taught me a lot. What can I learn from this? And so I revisited our recent conversations and talked with his family and our friends. And it's like, oh, like it's funny we glamorize this because I don't think, maybe not you and me specifically, but culturally, we glamorize the guy who just can get with women. It's like, that's not, I don't think that that's really beneficial for the guy or
I
the
don't
women.
think it's really like even here at Squatch or in certain places in Austin, it's like it's not it's not looked at as a good thing
Yeah.
anymore. And yeah, I mean, I think there's some kind of darkness to it. You know, you could be escaping, you numbing yourself out in a certain way, or maybe you don't have the confidence to take it to the next step, or maybe it's lust, maybe it's just like you like having sex,
lonely energy,
yeah,
you know, all
like
kinds of stuff.
I mean, personally, it feels like without a doubt there's something. Like I like the word you use, fractured within your spirit or your psyche. Some deep emotional thing you haven't taken a look at.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that everyone needs to get betrothed before they, you know, have,
No.
it's okay to have whatever beautiful experience that you want to have. But I think there is something about, for men and women, if you're seeking solely that and you get a lot of repetitions deep, despite what we talked about repetitions earlier, I think that there's a price for that. I don't think we know exactly why or exactly how that works out. But yeah, I just saw that to be true with him.
Yeah. Something that comes up too, because we're you just mentioned like the reps of dating so many times, and it seemed like it was mostly first dates. I had a acquaintance that mentioned, he said that if he ever wanted to date someone and take it seriously, he would need at least 10 dates before hooking up with her. It was very interesting, his explanation. His explanation, if I can recall correctly, is that men, when they have sex with a girl, it may, like early, it may subject or, I wouldn't say manipulate's the right word, but it may subject them to a different perspective of the girl because it's maybe a unconscious or like not as conscious drive to just keep having sex with her. So you think you're in love with her, but it's really the physical, sexual, attractiveness that you have, right? And so for him, he's like, okay, if I have 10 dates with this girl, like literally no, I think he said like nothing. I mean, you can maybe go like first base, but you get to like, you want to be friends with her. Yeah. And if she's friends with you, like you could be friends with this person for the rest of your life, then you can take it to the next step. Yeah. That was an interesting take. And some people might be like, oh, you're a prude, bro. I was like, no, I mean, I think that's smart. I mean, especially for people that are like, I have sex with a girl on the first or second date, like if you want a long lasting, healthy, soulful connection with someone, I think that's a good strategy. Yeah. And,
there's definitely not a one size fits all.
Yeah, it's different for everybody.
I think because of his intentions, if that's what feels right for him, I think that's great. Yeah. I think it looks different for everybody. And my rule for myself on the 54 first dates was like, do I see a future with this woman? Yeah. If there's no chance of a future, I will definitely not entertain that idea. And also, I don't want to ever force that, right? I want to see, because it's like, whether it's a first date or a second date or a 10th date, you're always kind of playing off the cuff, and she's giving you signals, you're interpreting those signals, you're giving her signals. So it should always obviously be like consensual. But I think too, because nowadays with men and women, it's not uncommon for both parties to kind of be jonesing for that level of intimacy pretty quick. Yeah. So I can't really speak from a woman's perspective, but I can say from a male's perspective, it's like if she's giving you the signs or explicitly saying like, I want to get to this level of intimacy, you need to ask yourself, it's your responsibility as a man to be like, all right, am I experimenting with the chemistry side of someone that I see a future with? Or am I, again, driven by lonely energy, a darkness, a lust, whatever it is, and find the origin of where the desire comes from. And if there's not desire, you should for sure not engage in that, And it's hard. It's really difficult, and it's hard, no pun intended, for men to do this, because it's like, it's ingrained in our physiology to like, plant the seed. So it takes a lot of awareness and mental fortitude to be like, hey man, what's the real reason behind your desire to do this? What do you really think about this this possible I don't want to say opportunity, but like she's kind of presenting you
Mhm.
with, or maybe you're presented with this choice. What's the real why behind the why?
Yeah.
And that's a tough time to ask for a male to like ask himself that question. But I can tell you from firsthand and tons of, working with clients and talking with people about this, there's so much remorse when people don't ask themselves that question, whether or not they choose to engage in it. There's
Yeah.
just always a lot more remorse. And I think, again, back to the kindness, and the most loving and kind thing you can do is to check in with yourself. If you can catch yourself. And again, it's a skill you kind of build up.
Yeah.
And our culture's not exactly like wired. The environment isn't really supportive of this,
No.
especially in metropolitan areas,
Yeah.
right? Because of that safety behind anonymity and a lot of like grass is greener fallacy. But I think it's like another thing that will distinguish you as a male. And it's another thing that women, if you do it and you're truthful with them about how you feel about a situation, they will appreciate you even more because,
Mhm.
again, it's not what they're used to experiencing in a lot of cases.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Um, that's probably difficult for a lot of men, is to ask yourself the honest question and to really like feel, is this, am I going to say yes because it's a, yeah, I've been lonely. It's just, I want to feel the lust. I wouldn't call it lust, but like, is it coming from a lustful, place, or, is it just like really, a deep connection? Um, Yeah, that's difficult.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's a touchy subject too, right? Because like especially nowadays, everybody's all in arms about, just yeah, there's a lot of modern issues that revolve around, I think, this topic without really touching on it specifically.
yeah.
Like the dynamic between men and women. I do think as men, it's our responsibility to um really have judicial discussions with ourselves about this
Mm,
stuff.
yeah.
Yeah, really embody the power of discernment.
Mm. How
And like I'm not sitting here as like a perfect man.
No.
Like, I've been a
Yeah.
young kid, I've been in college and in the dating world, and dude, I fucked up a lot. And in all kinds of different areas, not
Who
even just
doesn't? Yeah.
intimacy.
Yeah.
Uh and and it's like I have very few, I wouldn't say regrets because you learn from them, but I have very little remorse in life. But some of it goes behind those times where I'm like, man, I knew that wasn't the right call. And I don't think that was right by her or by
Yeah.
me. And
Yeah.
I don't want to make that mistake again.
Yeah. How would you, if I was your client, how would you help me with improving my discernment?
Mm, that was a complex one
Once
because
again, it comes down to like, you just gotta keep doing it, I
that's
guess.
part of it.
Yeah,
But
like,
the other thing that I like to say to everyone, and this is honestly, this helps with decision fatigue in general, is remove all the filters, right? Like remove what other people think of you, what your parents or your peers that you grew up with might have instilled in you, what this woman
mm,
that you're dating or these women that you're talking to and considering taking on dates, what they might think, and just get as raw and simple as possible, deep down in your core, in your gut, and your intuition, your instinct. What's the right call for any call, whether that's like asking a girl on a date or continuing to see her, or even is it the right time to date? It's like remove as many filters as possible, which is so much harder than it sounds, and get as
mhm,
raw
yeah.
and real with yourself. Because if you find yourself as a man rationalizing anything or overthinking anything, you're not raw and real. It
Yeah.
should be something that like you ask yourself this question is like, I don't know if I want to admit it, but this is the answer. It's like that gut instinct,
Yeah.
that knee jerk answer is the one that I would suggest like people get in tune with. So obviously there's more steps and nuance than that. But if that's would be where I would, suggest
Yeah,
people
yeah.
start peeling away the layers. And sometimes it's like an onion. It takes a little while. You might cry a little bit. It might be stinky, but like eventually you'll get to the core of the matter.
Mm. Hmm. Nice, man. Hmm. Well, we got a good hour and a half in there. Is there any message that you want to convey for the listener? I usually say that comes from the heart.
Mm,
It could also be from the mind too.
yeah.
But I've had some people, when I say come from the heart, I've had a specific podcast guest be like, oh, that changes things, you know?
Mm,
So if there's anything that comes from the heart that you'd like to conclude with.
yeah. Is it all right if there's a story attached to it?
Absolutely. Take your time.
So the whole self-loathing, suicidal thoughts is a low point. The other low point is being in a long-term relationship, and one that I saw a long-term future with, and then finding a year into that they had a secret relationship with someone else. Or sorry, that they had a year-long relationship after we had been together for about 2 years.
When you were married? Or just a different...
Just, yeah, one of my longer-term relationships, yeah. And so when you find that out, there's a lot that goes on, right?
Yeah.
I have a friend who has a theory that your heart can only be broken once. At that time, I had not heard that theory, and so I thought I could tape it back together and we could work on things if that's what she wanted. That's what she decided she wanted, and we worked on it for 3 years, and it was like trying to shove a round peg into a square hole. But similar to some other things we've talked about, I don't see it as a waste of time or resources, because that's what I needed to know to become the man that I am today. I would not be in Austin. I would never work for Heart and Soil. I wouldn't be dating the girl that I am now.
Yep.
I would never have had the balls to start my own business and continue to fight the challenges that go along with that. I wouldn't have seen the merit in being unabashedly myself, transparent, for being reasonably disagreeable, had I not experienced being cheated on in that way. And I have not done that, and I don't plan on ever doing that. But I also didn't become a victim of that. And I know that there's a lot of guys out there who may have cheated or been cheated on. And I just want to say, even though this might be the most controversial thing that I ever say in front of a camera, is like, if you've done that or if you've been a victim of that, that's okay. Because typically it's a byproduct of needs not being met. And now I'm not blaming the man or the women in this scenario or in my scenario. In fact, my ex is a good person. I'm still rooting for her. I still want her happiness. But going through that and refusing to be a victim and then trying to work on it for 3 years and then finally throwing in the towel gave me so much clarity. And I am probably one of the least possessive or jealous people that you would meet in a relationship. In fact, my girlfriend, Courtney, she's super connector at all these events. She gets hit on guys in like Lady Bird Lake Trail. She'll go out to these events. Guys approach her all the time. She goes on one-on-ones with a lot of guys. I don't mind at all because there's a level of trust. And I know what it's like to be with someone who I don't have that trust with. And so that's a long-winded way of saying, if you're hurt in a way, be sure to close the loop. Because I wouldn't be able to be this way in this relationship if I hadn't forgiven her and if I hadn't seen things from her way and understood why someone would go do that. Because it wasn't, I'm just not that kind of guy. I'm too stubborn, too loyal. But I had to put myself in her shoes. And then because I understood it, I was able to heal from it. Because I understood it, I was able to not carry it with me into my subsequent relationships, you know? And I just think that's really important, because a lot of people, when someone does that, they write the other person off. Or if it happens to them, they become possessive in their future relationships or untrusting. And it's like, it's okay to close the loop on that. In fact, I think everything that bothers you, you should be closing the loop on, because that enables you to learn from it and not be susceptible to it in the future. So that's just my hot take on that.
Yeah, and I'm sure you learned how to be more, because like at the end of the day, there's probably some responsibility.
Oh, for sure.
In there as well.
I was ignorant to her needs not being met. Although on the flip side, people would argue like, well, if someone goes off and does that, they should have asked for you. But in a way she did, not as explicitly as I would have liked. But I also didn't, I knew in my gut that something was off, but I was so wrapped up in like my hobbies and my friends and all of my stuff selfishly,
yeah,
really.
yeah.
Like everything from like gaming to sports to my career. And then I realized I in a way I neglected her without even knowing. But that doesn't make me void of responsibility.
Right.
Or yeah, I
Yeah.
should have been tapped in enough. If I had cared enough and I had been less selfish, I would have gotten a handle on it. But we share responsibility. For her, she had an opportunity to come to me
Mhm.
and ask for needs, and she did it, and she sought them elsewhere. And we both grew because of that, experience. So I would just say, look for closing the loops and less condemnation for yourself and for
Oof,
others.
that's good.
And I think that you'll find your ability to heal and 10x yourself. Like everything bad is a springboard, man. It's like so hard retroactively to hate these things that happen to us, because they can become your rocket fuel, your superpower.
Mm.
And yeah, that's probably what I'll end on.
Nice, man. Yeah. That was, I like that. Closing the loops on some of your painful triggers and not condemning yourself. That's, it's harder. It's easier said than done.
Mhm.
That's for sure. So, but listen, man, appreciate your time. Thank you for coming on. This is very helpful. I think for a lot of people, myself included, as I have a date tomorrow. So
yeah, I want to hear how that goes.
Yeah. But I think we can conclude it.
Heck yeah. Thanks for having me, man. It's been fun.
Yeah. Thank you. Peace.
Doses.
Different things, but
I feel like this should be on the podcast.
yeah.
I think you should start over and keep going with it. Yeah. Bonus.
Okay.
You can
back.
decide whether or not you want to
Yeah, we can
put it in there.
Yeah. So we were just talking about like a friend of mine was saying how he doesn't believe in balance. It's come from a man. And I was saying how, and I've mentioned on the podcast before, how I think that life is a dance between balance and self-awareness. And we were talking about multiple things throughout this conversation that I'm trying to remember specific examples. We were saying how like you want to
Talking from like sincerity to playfulness.
Yeah. Structure and then just
And
like
then
being fun.
Yeah.
And so I was wondering what you think about that. Like, do you think, because, I was giving examples to some great, well accomplished, or at least in the eyes of society, well accomplished men, like Tiger Woods, Winston Churchill, Michael Jordan. But then you see there's a dark side to some of their lives. Like Michael Jordan was a massive gambler. And Tiger Woods had a sex addict. He had to jump out of helicopters to get like a dopamine hit or some rush adrenaline. He was working with SWAT teams. Like he needed the adrenaline and the rush because he was just so, and I get that. I mean, I've heard it's termed the astronaut phase, where you're so successful in your life early, you go to the moon, you accomplish something so great, and then that kind of phases out. You evolve and you keep going. It's like, well, what the fuck do I do now?
Yeah.
Like I remember, I'm not like a huge fan of Justin Bieber. I do like some of his songs, but anyways, he was just saying how like he got into some dark phases because he was saying the feeling and sensations that you get when you're on stage, it's so cathartic that it's so hard to find that liveliness in other aspects of life.
Yeah.
And so anyways, that's a whole stream of consciousness of me prompting the question of what you believe when it comes to balance and greatness as a man.
I think I don't have the answer for it, but there's two things that come to mind. One is, if you want to be a master of your craft, I do think you have to be obsessed. But then the flip side is what are you willing to give to reach that master level proficiency? Because personally, the names that you suggested, I don't desire to be any of them. I don't desire to be akin to, a pro sports. Name your sport, name your person. I don't have a desire. I don't desire to be a Winston Churchill, an Albert Einstein, whatever. even modern day people like Jordan Peterson. It's like he's been through a lot. I don't know if I would want his life. People like here in Austin, I know Chris Williamson. He's a great guy. He's sacrificed a ton to be where he is in podcasting. I admire it, but would I choose that if I had the choice? I don't know. So I think the question we have to ask ourselves as men is, what is balance worth it to you, and what's success worth to you? And is your success the same level of success as these other people, or is your success different? People might say that this answer, or rather my vision I'm about to share, is actually demotivating, but it motivates me more than anything. I desire to live a life where I've achieved enough to be proud of, but I never sacrifice the things that matter to me, the little things along the way. And I do think that that requires balance, but that's my vision. I don't know if everyone wants that, right? Like I see in my future, a few kids, a wife, a house, a small community being off the radar. And maybe in my past, I have helped a lot of people and I've achieved some things, and I'm proud of those, but I don't expect it to be these astronomical things. And it's not because I'm not thinking big enough. It's because I'm thinking pragmatically enough. And I understand that the happiness that I derive doesn't come from these massive achievements. It comes from the game nights where I'm catching up with friends I haven't seen in a few months and we're just shooting the shit. It comes with a cup of coffee with my dogs, swinging on the porch, swinging in the mornings. And are there things that are worth doing and sacrificing little things for occasionally? Of course. But how far are you willing to go? And then once you get to the moon, how satisfied are you with that? And I don't know. I haven't done it. So this is just from witnessing and extracting from other people's lives. So I can't tell. This is the one thing I haven't experimented with firsthand, but I can tell you intuitively, sacrificing balance to me sounds dangerous.
I agree.
And almost like a false sense of glory. Again, just for me personally.
I wonder too, coming from like a spiritual lens, or even an evolutionary lens. Some men are just built to progress, and it was important for them to do that in regards of like protecting a village.
Almost like this David Goggins. David Goggins.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
I'm not that guy.
And that's a sign of wisdom that you've recognized that within yourself, right? I think it's different once again. Like that's the beauty of life and like humans, is that we are so complex and we don't know everything, and we think we know more than we know. There's just so much that we don't know. So I think it's interesting because like for me, when I injured myself and and there's probably, I know that there are things that I like, there's a reason why I'm like looking more at spiritual stuff, spiritual topics, and actually trying to practice things and read. And it's because I'm trying to like clarify and look at the dark aspects of myself, so that one, I can feel free. We're always going to have fear to some extent, right? But like I can feel free, more loving, more confident. And I want to get to that point so that I can build a family and be a great person in my community. And you don't want to get stuck down the escapism of like, I have to get to these points in order to do that. But, but I found like, and maybe there's certain things I still have to address, but I found like when I was injured, it was like without a mission, I feel lost. I feel fucking lost. And without going to the gym and doing all these things, it's like there's no regressing. So like if you keep progressing forward and you're wildly successful, but you still want to maintain balance. Like I look at Joe Rogan, like I talk about him all the time. Anybody that listens to my podcast, they know that he's a big, I'm a big fan. I like what he does. And he seems to like demonstrate, in my eyes at least, I don't know, I've never met him, I'm not like boys with him or anything like that, but he seems to demonstrate some form of balance, but he's wildly successful. He's like one of the greatest podcasters, or at least widely, from like a statistical view, like widely known. But
If you
then
had to take a stab, and part of my interruption,
yeah, go ahead.
why would you think that that is? My answer is that he's consistent in the things that he loves.
Yeah, he's very he said he's always followed his instincts. Like he just had Jordan Peterson on. He released an episode with him the other day, and he was just saying, he's like, I've always followed that intuition.
Mm.
When it was martial arts, he was like, I know this is gonna help me get out of like this stage of my life to be better. But he knew it was he's followed things that he has a and that's why his podcasts are so great. He puts people on that he like genuinely loves. The topics are what he's genuinely curious about.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and he's so popular because he's had these crazy conversations that you wouldn't typically have on a script. Like media can be very scripted,
Mm-hmm.
and like his most popular episode is with Bob Lazar. Bob Lazar is this guy that supposedly like started working for Area 51 and was like helping with these like like an element that we don't even like an element that we don't even know about.
Wow.
And when you listen to it, it's like you think this guy is telling the truth because he talks about how like, listen, man, the government's like trying to kill me. And so he went out to like talk about it, but just his like Bob Lazar's demeanor and his way of speaking, you're like, this guy doesn't seem like he's looking for attention.
Crazy, yeah.
He had migraines during the episode too, so they had to stop. Like, yeah, he was like so. Anyways, so like Joe has these like he's an MMA commentator. He loves fighting, loves these conversations that talk about topics that he's like genuinely interested in.
But he still goes out and does stand-up comedy. He raises a family who he seems to care a lot for. He cares about his health. Like, I don't see that he sacrifices
he's
things
probably not
that mean much to him. And maybe, I mean, there's sacrifice in some ways, sure.
So I guess what I'm saying is that what we're speaking to is like the greatness and the balance. Like he seems in my eyes to be accomplishing that.
Yeah.
Like he's gotten so great at the things that he does, and from a like objective standard of like human eyes on him, he's wildly well known, and he still seems like he loves himself. He loves life, and that's pretty interesting to me. And so like with Michael Jordan and Tiger Woods, like they went off kind of on the deep end at a certain point, and they didn't find that balance. But then on the other side of that, they had great accomplishments, and like so. Yeah, it's very interesting. Like there's different men out there that can be very great, but they create that. Like they do it. There's a song I was listening to the other day. It was like, what was it?
It's probably a Bieber song.
No, I haven't listened to Biebs in a while.
Oh, the Bieber.
But I can't remember it. But it was how this guy, Frank Sinatra, I Do It My Way. Or it's like My Way, that song.
Okay.
How he's traveled all these highways and he's done all these accomplishments. And like the entire time he's done it his way. And he's not perfect. Like no one, he's probably done some, some shit here and there. But like, yeah, it's just, it's interesting.
I'm more of an and than an or guy. And so with, Rogan and other people like him, that have been wildly successful, but maybe not at the cost of the things that are important to them. I just wonder if, as humans, I think we tend to oversimplify things to understand them.
Yeah.
And so maybe success doesn't require sacrifice. It's just a choice of whether or not you're going to persevere at a slower pace. Because I see it as like with finite resources and everything like that, I see it as, it's so funny. What's up, dude? I see it as like, are you going to triage everything into one mission and you trying to expedite your progress at that one mission? Or are you going to slowly, incrementally, gradually progress and nothing is going to stop you?
Yeah.
So you can maintain balance while you're doing that, but it just might be a slower road to get there.
Yeah.
So, and it's like, again, I'm an and guy. So I think you could do both. I would prefer to do both. And I could be wrong about that, but I'm not also trying to dismiss guys who don't want to have balance. If like back to the intuition thing, check with your gut. If you don't care about anything else but this one thing, all right, go all in, see what happens. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. But if you're a guy, it's like, man, I think I'm a bad person when I don't focus on my health. I think I'm bad in a relationship, and relationships are important to me when I like don't get some downtime to recuperate. Then it's like, maybe don't do that. It's just ask your gut and see which way it points you.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh shit, I lost my train of thought. Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, because having that, this goes back to discernment, to your gut feeling. There's so many times where I'm like, maybe I should quit this podcast. So many times.
Is that what your gut feeling is, or is that you rationalizing
it? Might be the rational.
Yeah.
It might be me rationalizing it. But like, we're almost concluding this conversation, and I'm
for
like,
the second time.
That's never happened before, by the way. No.
No.
So I don't know how I'm going to edit all that, but
that's all right.
But like, I know in my heart and in my gut now, I'm like, I'm so thankful for this conversation. It's, it's something that I like doing.
Yeah.
And it brings meaning to my life.
Don't stop, dude. If your gut tells you love it, everything else will work itself out in the long run. And maybe that's me being overly optimistic. But I do believe that, Yeah. And I'm doing the same thing, right? Like, I'm back to what we were talking about. I pivoted in a way that not a lot of people would suggest I should have, going from like working under Paul Saladino and having tried all these diets. It's like, I still believe that men need to focus on health. So I'm not completely throwing that in the trash, but it's like, who are you to be? I've actually had people ask that in the last few weeks, even like, who are you to be a dating coach? I'm like, I'm passionate about it. So I think that makes me the right guy.
I mean, you went on 54 dates. That's proof of work right there, man. Or more than that. I mean, that was just here in Austin.
So well, and then to reflect that at you, how many podcasts have you done?
This will be 62, I think.
So that's more than 54.
Yeah. Yeah.
Keep it up.
We shall see. All right. I think we're done.
To be continued.
Should we get back? All right.
Tune in next time. Well, thanks again, man.
Yeah.
It's been fun.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Deuces.